Hey guys, Enigmatic Mr. L here, and welcome to the companion piece to my top 10 favorite Pokemon video. Instead, we have my top 10 most disliked Pokemon. So, while it's popular on the internet to just rag on things, people see people hate on things, just want to make a few things clear. One, obviously, if you like any of these Pokemon, that's great. It's more power to you. Honestly, with the exception of the number one spot, maybe like number two, I don't even outright hate any of these Pokemon. I just dislike them. Uh, and secondly, as I mentioned in my top 10 favorite Pokemon video, I am unfamiliar with Pokemon generations 8 and 9, the Sword and Shield, and then Violet and Scarlet. So there won't be any of those Pokemon on this list. So, with that out of the way, let's just get right into it. Starting at number 10, we have Mr. Mime. Now, while I do think that Gen 1 Pokemon are the most iconic and they're my favorite, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of them are the greatest. Case in point is Mr. Mime, who is on this list solely just because of how creepy looking it is. And I can get some Pokemon a bit scary looking, like the tough, fierce ones, but Mr. Mime just is creepy right from the beginning. Then with the transition to 3D models of like X and Y, it did not do that any favors. Looks kind of disturbing, like the Detective Pikachu movie as well. Really, the only saving grace for Mr. Mime. Originally, I had a top 10 most disliked Pokemon years ago, and Mr. Mime was like number 4 or 5. But what kind of saves it a bit here is I do think just purely as a utility, I find it useful enough. Granted, any Pokemon can be useful in casual playthroughs, but with Mr. Mime, you can just invest into speed, give it a choice scarf, and teach it trick. So you're either outspeeding opponents, or you can use trick on them and force a choice item onto them, which is kind of funny, gimmicky build. Other than that, it has a fun enough minigame, Pokemon Stadium 2. So, but beyond that, just the sheer creepiness factor earns it the bottom spot on this list. Next, we have Love Disc, which is just boring filler water type. Its stats are lousy. It doesn't look all that interesting. It just looks kind of like a cushion more than anything. Doesn't evolve into anything more interesting. Can be useful for grinding like heart scales in some of the games, but even then, that's just more of like a tedious chore than anything. So I've heard some people say this Pokemon's forgettable, which it kind of is. It kind of makes between forgettable and disliked, which is why it makes this list, but fairly low. Next, we have Dunsparce, which is just this ugly looking thing, which finally got an evolution in like Gen 9, I think, but kind of too little, too late. It learns a lot of good moves, if memory serves, but it doesn't really have the stats to do anything with those moves. Like, all of its base stats around like 70-ish. So if it just kind of like specialize in something, like make it slow but a good attacker, or like good special attacker, make it poor offense but good defense or something. Even kept the same base stat total ish, just specialize in something. But as it stands, it can't even do anything particular well. It's kind of like you're jack of all trades, master of none. This is just not even a jack of all trades, just the master of none part. So yeah, that's why Dunsparce is here. Bruxish was the only Pokemon I disliked its design of in Gen 7. Everything else I thought was at least okay, but this thing, someone just pointed out, looks like Hooker Magikarp, or fusing like a Magikarp and a Jinx together. I honestly don't know anything about its stat line and moves. Could be useful in competitive play, could be garbage. Most likely somewhere in between, but regardless, nothing that's really going to change how I feel about it. And if I caught one just to fill out the Pokédex and never used it, never wanted to use it at all. So yeah, just ugly Pokemon. Not as bad as the Pokemon that is literal garbage, though. Kind of debated here putting either Trubbish or Gardevoir, but at least Gardevoir kind of resembles like a mouse, kind of fits in with the trash aesthetic, overflowing. And that's at least something. Trubbish here is just a trash bag. That's all it is. And, some people might complain, it's like, well, you give Gen 1 a pass, though. Yeah, just Grimer and Muck, just piles of sludge. And I could see someone disliking Grimer and Muck. I don't personally, but some say they're just piles of sludge. In a vacuum, that's fair. But comparison, it's like, at least a pile of sludge is something, like a slime monster. This Pokemon's literally just like a doggy-doo bag, which is why it's earned this spot on the list. And here we have the other Gen 5 Pokemon that's popular to hate on. I know it's kind of a cold take, cold take, but again, kind of debated which of the Vanillix line to use. I think Vanillite is fine enough. I mean, it's still not great, but it's just like a scoop of ice cream. It's like, yeah, but it could just be like a snowball. It doesn't have to be just, ice cream. Here, with the cone part and the straw part, it's definitely just unambiguously ice cream. Yeah, honestly, it could swap Vanillix with Trubbish, the two Gen 5 the Gen 5 Pokemon that everyone just kind of loves to hate on, and I think for a good reason. I just kind of put Vanillix a little bit higher on the list because at the very least, Trubbish was used in a playthrough by Chuck Conroy in his Pokemon Black and White LP, so that's something. And I did manage to catch a shiny Garbodor, so no, this doesn't apply to everyone, but personal experience, that earns it a little bit less dislike than Vanillix. Next, we have Gardevoir. You can probably guess the reason why it's on here. It has nothing to do with the games itself. In the games itself, it's okay enough. I imagine there are many people that caught it and they're just like, oh, it's this little alien thing, psychic type, later fairy type, used on their team. It's fine. It's just the main problem is the internet just kind of ruins it. Like, I know they're lowballing. There are probably thousands of people who like Gardevoir for perfectly normal reasons, but just kind of they get lumped in with a bad egg. Like, time someone says Gardevoir is your favorite Pokemon, just kind of gets an eyebrow raise out of me, which might not be entirely warranted. But Gardevoir is a big reason why I decided to make this list, as I recently discovered the Pokemon Company is making a life-size Gardevoir plushie, which I was just like, Arceus, help us all. And on the same general line, we have Lopunny, which, again, you could kind of interswap this place with Gardevoir. I put Lopunny a little bit higher up, just because Gardevoir is like, what's it based off? A ballerina, maybe a knight, whatever. Lopunny, yeah, at least part of it's just kind of funny, but also it's kind of a reference to the whole Playboy thing going on. And it's just default pose, like covering its chest. It's bad. Gardevoir also has a Pokeball summon in Smash Bros. That helps it out. Lopunny, I do think it's funny. I think one of its abilities is Klutz. It can't use an item. Maybe that's useful in some niche situations, but wasn't enough to give it a lower ranking than Gardevoir. Just this and Gardevoir, they're just kind of been ruined by the internet. I know there's like a Gen 7 Pokemon, like this grass type. I don't even remember the name of it, like offhand. It kind of fits in these categories, but maybe it's just because it came so late. Like Gen 7 is about the time I stopped playing main series Pokemon, but it didn't quite make the list. Just because I don't think it has enough time to be infamous as these two. Next, we have Jinx, which you can't really talk about Jinx without discussing how it looked like in the originally. Instead of purple skin, it was black. I honestly don't know Game Freak's intention, whether it was meant to be a racist character or not, but will say, even if Jinx had been purple from the very get-go, it still would have made this spot on the list. Like every other Pokemon, you can generally know what it's based off of. So it's based off this animal, or maybe this animal, maybe a combination. It might have some certain sub-characteristics where it's reminiscent of something else, like an animal or plant or some urban legend. Jinx, no one knows what's based off of. Originally could have been a racist character, or, it could have been based on some sort of like style that's popular in Japan. But people have pointed out it doesn't quite line up with Red and Blue's development cycle. It's also been based off like an opera singer, or like the singing of the Valkyries, or there's some sort of like mythical creature that resembles Jinx. I can't remember. It's like a yokai or something that has like tattered blonde hair or something. But it's just such a mess of a Pokemon. It's like known as the human egg Pokemon. And just annoying in battle. This lovely kiss and freezing with Blizzard and Psychic. That battle part isn't the main reason it's on here, obviously, but it's just so weird. I honestly think when Pokemon did the deck set a while back, and they're just like, you can't transfer into Pokemon, would have been a good time to just completely scrap Jinx altogether. So before we get into my number one most disliked Pokemon, this may be Jinx that I want to actively hate. Here are just some dishonorable mentions in no particular order. Dugtrio, it's a fine enough Pokemon. It's fast. It hits hard enough. It's really weak. But I just think Diglett is a better design overall. It's the simplicity of it, as opposed to just having three Diglett bunched together. I mean, Magnemite did the same thing, but that kind of works like magnets attracting one another, kind of resembles like an air drone. And Doduo just gained another head with a Dodrio, but yeah, it already had the two-head thing going on. Having a third head, it's fine, whatever. Just Dugtrio, I just like the simplicity of Diglett more. We got Slurpluff, just cotton candy / cake, pretty lame. Right up there with lame. We got Aromatisse, just perfume. Also, with that leg, is trying to get them some Gardevoir, like Lopunny vibes. Smoochum is on here, just like Jinx. It's this weird, ugly thing, but Smoochum's on just here partially just because of what she represents, just baby Pokemon. Like, it's fun when one of your favorite Pokemon gets a new evolution, like they weren't quite competitively viable, but you like them anyway. Now they have better stats or something. Baby Pokemon, just what do? You transfer one over, you breed it, and then you just like release it. Like, I think there might be certain situations where the baby Pokemon can learn certain moves, but you can just not have the baby Pokemon and have the original Pokemon just learn those moves anyway through some other means. Just never been a fan of baby Pokemon. Speaking of things just representing something else, we have Celebi just representing the event Pokemon. It's already so difficult enough, like catching them all, filling out your Pokédex, and then you have these Pokemon that are just event distribution only. And yeah, Mew started the whole thing, but I just can't bring myself to outright dislike Mew. And if it was just one, it'd probably been easy enough. Just like, hey, every year, a few years or so, make sure to remember to get your Mew. But this started the trend of just each generation having at least one Pokemon you legitimately can't get outside of hacking or event distribution. Or glitches, I guess. Plus, Celebi just has the problem where it was like originally intended to be in that like gold silver ball in the Pokemon anime before they scrapped that and shelved the Pokeball and hope no one noticed. But of course, people did. It was this big speculative thing to this day. A lot of people still don't know what was originally planned in it. So there's that. Wombathat, kind of annoying when you encounter it because of its Shadow Tag ability. You can't run from it. You can't just swap out to another Pokemon. But main reason it's on here is just in Smash Brothers, it's annoying. You try to get Pokemon to help you. And Wombathat, even if you're the person who summons it, it oftentimes feels more like a liability than an asset because you end up, I don't think you take damage from it, but your character just like bumps into it. Could just be interfering with you. Zubat, the amount of Zubats in the caves is too darn high. At the very least, if you catch one after Gen 1, evolve it to Crobat. That's a pretty good, it's a decent enough Pokemon, really high speed, so at least it has that going for it. And we have Rhyperior on here the same reason as Dugtrio is. Rhydon, I like its design. Rhyperior, not so much. Like, I understand Rhydon wasn't the most competitively viable Pokemon, but if they're going to give it an evolution, I wish it looked as good as the original. And with these dishonorable mentions out of the way, let's just get on to my number one pick. It's Klefki, who I despise with a burning passion. Just the epitome of lazy Pokemon design. Like, when you design in 5 minutes, it's just a pair of keys. Like, I remember I saw this thing through a leak when Gen 6 was coming out, Pokemon X and Y, and I was just hoping it was fake, but of course it wasn't. I just saw this thing. So what are we going to have next? Like a coffee pot Pokemon, a stapler Pokemon? Just, it's one thing to have like, the snow Pokemon or like Gen 7 out of Sandcastle, but that at least has something to do with like natural objects, like natural sand. Just purely man-made object. It's just a pair of keys. And I really hate it. It doesn't have anything to do with how good or bad it is because I never use one. The thing could be fantastic in battle. It could be garbage. It could just be annoying. Be middle of the road. It doesn't make a difference. It still earns this number one spot. That was my list. As always, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave your comments which Pokemon you dislike or even despise in the comments below. And I will see you guys next time. This is Enigmatic Mr. L, signing out.